Yeah. She'll miss all the exciting committee updates. You know. All right. Well, I think on today's agenda, I might have actually gotten all of the names of professional counsel at the top. The last couple of you've noticed, like random people have been missing, but so
we also changed the date to 26. It was 25 up until like March.
Yeah, I have a hard time with dates. Yeah,
I was going back through it. I'm like, wait a second.
yes,
Yeah.
So
It's all good.
you know, it's sometimes those details. But thank you all again for being here. We've got 2 additional scheduled meetings after today. And as usual, we thought we would start with committee updates. Some of our committees haven't met since our last meeting. Appraisal being one of them, but just kind of reminding everybody that appraisal will be meeting at the end of this month. And in theory, between the appraisal meeting and our last scheduled meeting, something could happen. We could have a proposal. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens there. Calendar committee has not met. However, one of the things that we talked about in the last calendar meeting was the personnel calendar, and Eric Hansen and many others worked on getting a copy of the personnel calendar for next year published. It is on the Ozone if you can get on the Ozone. You know, we'll work all that out. So here's our copy for the 26-27 calendar. And since we are having continued conversations about blackout days, I believe there may have been a note someplace about days may change, but I know that was a little bit of a conversation, but we did shade the blackout days as per usual. And I struggled with printing on 2 sides. So we got 2 pieces of paper on this one, in honor of Earth Day.
It's a friendly reminder.
Yeah, friendly reminder to press 2-sided. Thank you. I think the only thing that we have left in calendar committee is the grade and reporting dates calendar. Thank you. Which is pretty traditional, but we started looking at it in calendar committee and noticed there are some things on there that have just always been on there that maybe, you know, the like printing grade cards. And so we were taking some time in our last calendar committee meeting to actually go through the document and, you know, take off the things that have been there forever but don't actually make sense anymore. The dates and everything are set for grade and reportings as you know, as we've done in the past, but we just wanted to clean that up. Because those things cause confusion, particularly the new staff that are like, why is this on here if it's not the way we do things anymore? I think that's all for appraisal and calendar. You know, benefits, we're still waiting on our next meeting.
Moving on the RFP process. So have another meeting scheduled next week to go through some final offer pieces. So then we thought after that meeting we'd be able to look at scheduling a benefits committee meeting at the next point there.
And again, the potential shift in health insurance would be in 2027. It's our routine to go out and get different proposals on the schedule. On conferences, we did get a chance to connect with our 2 sites that had conference variances for this year. And I know they've been working on getting some language to the chairs of the conference committee. I don't know if that's happened yet, but I know they've been working on it. So that will be coming your way. Any other committees that I missed?
With conferences, the survey was reopened for the parents because we had less than 200 respondents. Since the survey was sent out in a different way than it typically has been sent out, it was sent out in like the newsletter, like district newsletter, versus principals pushing it out. So principals were encouraged to push it out so we could get more input, because 150
families across our district is not a very good representation of the families that we serve. So that has been opened back up. That was right after spring break. We kind of coordinated all of that conversation. So we'll follow up next to get that closed back and get the results.
I mean, we probably did talk about this previously, but is that survey available in Spanish or different languages as well?
I don't believe it was, now that you say that. I don't remember. It's possible that they, after we drafted it, I think they translated it. Yeah, communications did that, but we did not write the original in multiple languages. But I think once comms had it, they did. Yeah.
Nathan, anything else on committee drive? Hi. So we've had 3 proposals on blackout days, elementary plan time on 4-day student contact weeks, and SPED paperwork. So we look forward to hearing a response and questions regarding those proposals.
So, we appreciated your proposal for blackout days and had some further conversation on that, and so wanted to provide a counter back. And so to start off with, we just wanted to acknowledge that we agree that there are several days that we could eliminate from our blackout day calendar, if you will. But we also felt like there was a need, particularly on student contact days, to ensure that we have, that consistency and quality instruction for our kids, and to also make certain that our substitute services could meet the needs of the absences. So, when you look through our counter proposal, these were kind of our aims. Number 1 was to ensure that consistency during student contact time, including before and after holiday breaks that constrain substitute services. Second was to provide support for the current parent-teacher conference format and the time allotted for meeting with parents outside the contract day in exchange for that time off on Thursday and Friday. That is an area that, in talking with our substitute services and our leave group, that is super confusing as it currently stands, because we changed how conferences are done, but had never adjusted blackout days to kind of mirror the expectation for that. So it's been a little wonky. And then our third aim was to recognize educators as professionals and attending professional learning. So the following slides are going to kind of walk us through month by month and point out those days that we kept the same, but then also identified those that would be changed or impacted. And then we have some summary slides at the end that will show where the reduction in annual blackout days is for 26-27. So we'll dive in first with August. And so, as you all know, as it currently stands, you're going to see on the left the current blackout day in the shadows there. And so those are the current blackout days, which is most of August. And so you can see in our bullets on the right side, what we're proposing is that, of course, those first 3 days for our new educators would continue to be blackout days. We have provisions written in the contract for them to receive compensation for those days even. And then we felt like, as we looked at those other days, that really what was most important were those 2 days leading up to, number 1, the half day with kids on the 13th, and then that full first day with kids. So those other dates, the 6th, 7th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and then the remainder of August, we would remove as blackout days. So you'll see on each of these slides, we put a bullet that says how many of those days would be eliminated. So there'd be 13 days eliminated in August from the blackout calendar. In September, we kept that the same. The only blackout days there are those that butt up to Labor Day. And so those are student contact days as well. So we kept those in place. In October, this is where it gets a little wonky, and looks probably the most different. And that's because of that parent-teacher conference week. And we now have that flexibility built in for educators to be able to meet with parents outside of their contract day, Monday and Tuesday. And then we all have those identified times on Wednesday to meet with parents. And so what we did was we identified that week of conferences as a blackout, because in order to get those hours for those conferences, you would need to be present in order to do that. But what we did remove was that Friday the 9th is a professional development day, so that would be removed as a blackout day. So those in the green box would be the blackout days. In November, the student contact days before and after the holiday would remain as blackout days. But on November 2nd, that's a professional development day, and we would eliminate that as a blackout day. In December, we kept that the same, so that would be neutral. In January, same thing, we would keep that just as it stands. February, we get back into the conference situation. So right now, the 5th is a PD day, so we would eliminate that as a blackout day. The week of parent-teacher conferences would be identified as blackout days. And then the 16th is that day after a holiday, after the President's Day holiday, that we would continue to keep as a blackout day. March would remain the same, just as it is now. And then in April, both April 23rd and 30th are professional development, and we would eliminate those from the blackout day calendar. And then in May, we have a pretty big shift there. So again, all those shadowed boxes there are current blackout days. So we were proposing that the last 8 days with student contact time and the final educator contract day remain blackout days. But those other 6 remaining days would be eliminated from the blackout provision. So May 3rd through the 7th and May 10th would be eliminated as blackout days. So the next slide just kind of gives you a summary month by month of whether there were blackout days adjusted or eliminated. So you can see there August, and then September, November, December, January, and March didn't have any change, and then month by month for the other ones. And so all in all, this proposal reduces the total number of blackout days by 20 days or 4 weeks or a month from our current projected amount. And we were also recommending that this be a policy that we implement for 26-27 and then reevaluate, because we could take a look to see, you know, if we suddenly have dates where we now are having an extreme shortage of substitutes, or we feel like we could even find places where maybe we could eliminate additional blackout days. We'd want to open up and have that conversation. And then again, just kind of reiterating that we agree that there are several of these days that can be eliminated. But we also want to point out that we continue to believe in the importance of professional development, and we eliminated professional development as blackout days. And so want to just make sure that we're pointing out some of the issues that may arise from that. If staff or educators are missing those professional learning days, that of course those are days that count towards PD points that also then translate into opportunities to move across on the salary schedule, and that the expectation would still stand that if you miss that professional learning, you're responsible for it. And that, you know, we aren't going to provide a makeup and those kinds of things. So we just want people to be, you know, aware and knowing that on the front side.
And just to clarify on that one, the PD points for those days, since it's during the contract day, would be relicensure. So that
Yes.
helps.
Yes. Yes.
That helps them be able to do those.
Right.
I think the question I have on the conference week, seeing all of that whole week identified, I'm just kind of thinking through potential confusions.
Mhm.
For the educator that, attains all of the outside of contract day hours that we need by the end of Wednesday, and they do a doctor's appointment or whatever on Thursday, because they already have their hours, then that wouldn't be a day off because they've done their contract hours, just like it is now.
Yes, yes, that's a great clarification. Yeah, we'd have to be really clear about that. Yes, that is our intent as well, yes.
Yeah, that is that's where my question went to as well. Because right now, if you take time on a blackout day, you have to fill out the form for it to be counted 1-to-1. So that Thursday and that Friday being included, that Friday is just a no school day anyway. So I don't know why Friday is included in the.
Well, technically, you're provided Friday off because you worked hours in order to earn that day off. It's always been counted as a contract day.
So that it's just that it sort of happens for most of us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yes, and I think the philosophy is that we provide 4 hours. You have to work like if it's a 40-hour work week, you have to work 36 of the hours, and we credit 4 hours, knowing that there was additional time in the case because of conferences. It counts as a paid contract day. Yes.
Having the whole week left off would help clarify that to people, and also will cause questions about, well, if that's not a day we work anyway. I mean, I think both are true.
Yeah, because like I was gonna say, none of like on here, it just says it's a no school day. On the regular calendar, it says a no school day. It doesn't say like, it's not a flex day. Like it's so, yeah, that is very confusing.
Yeah, it
And
sort
it's
of
not clear.
functions in a pseudo flex way though, right? Like some of us, at least in the secondary world, like I don't remember if elementary is similarly situated, but like some of us do work some of those hours on that Thursday.
On the Thursday,
And so,
but everybody has Friday off,
yes,
right? So like,
People that are.
yeah, so everybody has it off. So that's
Everybody
where,
who's in the bargaining.
are buildings open on those days?
Yes.
and yeah, definitely agree. We would need to be doing a lot of education and reminding that, you know, if you are not attending all of your PD, then you may find yourself behind when it comes to relicensure.
Right, I think our worry is to, and not like all professional learning is important, but I really think of those years where there's a new adoption of some kind, like you're really relying on that professional learning time in order to learn that new material and curriculum, so. But also fully recognize there's a lot of work that goes into that outside of just professional learning days to adopt that.
Presumably educators would still have the opportunity to be gone on a blackout day for that 2-for-1 or to get that approved for.
Yep.
No basement flooding on blackout days.
It'll be flooding on the, yeah.
Or as more questions surface.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
connect up and we'll talk about the elementary plan time on every week. Coming around you on the top and also what's being projected is the original proposal that you brought forth. And then on the bottom, and credit to Tricia and worked with Dr. Harrison, and they kind of went through your proposal, and ultimately there's really no change in structure or outcome or intent. Just some changes in wording and maybe breaking it up into not one long paragraph. Yeah, so a little bit of aesthetics. But if you read on our kind of proposal underneath, the intent is still the same. Educators assigned to teach full-time in an elementary program will receive a minimum of 300 minutes of individual plan time over a 5-day student contact week, which is equivalent to 240 minutes of individual plan time over a 4-day student contact week. And then the rest of it's the same. And then just instead of quoting a page number up there, you just cited that was in Appendix B of the negotiation. That way, as page numbers change, we don't have to go back and adjust those all the time. Tricia, is there anything you want to add? You really worked with Dr. Harrison on it.
So I think kind of where this came from was like that extra 30 minutes in the morning, right? Like it kind of got icky when everybody missed their Monday plan time, and I'm a teacher and always got Monday. And so I think if we like, and as a principal too, like talking to others, like if we can make like a 4-day schedule versus a 5-day schedule. And that's just like, obviously we need to communicate that with others and say, this is what needs to happen. And then that way, nobody always has to miss Mondays or nobody always has to miss Fridays. And then you just that like, okay, this is our 4-day week schedule instead of the A through D. Does that kind of make sense a little better? Okay. So hopefully that's helpful.
But it's not tied to Monday, Friday, or A through
Or A
D.
through D.
I know we had a conversation about. making that clear.
This is in both, and I guess I'm just more curious about this, but the opening phrase, opening clause, go back to my English years. Unless a variance is approved by professional counsel, have we ever had a variance at elementary for elementary plan time before? Like, so
That's it.
I was I'm kind of like, where did that come from? But I just thought I would throw that out as that's not something I'm aware of, but
Yeah, I'm. That out.
if that language is not in the secondary,
I mean, it also kind of is implied, right? Like
Yeah, that's what I was
variances
gonna
are,
say.
you can have a variance for any part of the agreement. So like,
So-
unless a variance is approved, like that's true for any of it, so.
In front of every-
Right. Yeah, it's like, in every section, in any section, approved variance on any part of it, so.
So maybe just start with all elementary.
Yes.
Yeah.
having language that feels as certain at all levels.
Yeah.
As one can have, I think, acknowledges that for all levels.
All right, so there's a proposal now.
Just feel like-
Right. If we take that phrase out of all of the places it is in the agreement, we might reduce a quarter of it.
But the understanding, like, which is equivalent to 240 minutes, like, the understanding would be that in a 4-day week, there's 240.
Yeah, over a 4-day, yeah. The 4-day part is better.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Pretend Dr. Harrison there. All right, and then the paperwork days, I'll hand these around. The first document that you'll get is a red line copy of the original proposal, and then on the back is the final copy with all the track changes on it. Whichever you prefer to look at, but I'll kind of walk through the red line and again, I want to give credit to Anjanette Tolman, sat down with me and we kind of went through this and she contributed greatly to this, with her expertise. The first red line there is just, and this is something we talked about, instead of special education educators, being very specific about certified special education staff, because ultimately that's who we're talking about here. And so, and then the next red line there based on, so those 4 days be based on 1.0 FTE and be prorated for less than full time. I want to be specific there. I think that was implied, but not necessarily stated. So just, like I said, the more we can be clear, the better. This was something else we wanted to make sure we added as a suggestion. These days must be used during the current school year and cannot be carried over the following year. Again, not that people would think that, but just to be clear. If the educator routinely has a substitute when absent, we didn't change any of that. However, will be provided for the professional employee on these days and is subject to the availability of substitutes also. And then we get down into the bullet points there. Professional sped paperwork days must be taken in full day increments in the event of all that was fine. If 2 educators want to share in 2 half day. The next bullet, we had a lot of discussion with Anjanette about what that looks like. Not only the day and working in conjunction with the principal. This is kind of where we landed. It basically says the same thing, but maybe just clarifies some processes. The date of each professional sped paperwork day must be approved by the building principal and will be determined collaboratively with the special education staff member. No changes in the third bullet. In the fourth bullet, I think the way it was worded was the special education department. So putting a lot of, if they were going to find a different space other than the building, putting that on the special education department. And there's a little bit of confusion about how that communication would go back and forth from the buildings to the SPED department, who that would be. So we thought really with the principals working with the educator, that's probably the best way to do it directly. And so we just said professional sped paperwork days must occur at the professional employee's home building or in another district building as arranged jointly with the building principal. The certified special education staff member will notify their building principal of the location prior to the date. So they're where they're at. And then the final bullet, struck that last part, the district will work in consultation. We weren't sure exactly what that was intended to mean or entailed either. Okay. And then similar to what Michelle said about the blackout days, we're really excited about this actually. I think it's a good thing. What we added at the end was just this policy will be in effect only for the 26-27 school year. However, it may be reevaluated for continuing implementation subsequent years. We just want to see what the financial impact is and kind of just make sure, to Michelle's point, that there aren't some things we're not thinking about. We've kind of done that on some past proposals where we kind of put it in and say, we'll come back and look at it and make sure it didn't have any unintended consequences. But we're both Anjanette and we are excited about it. I think it's a good thing.
Question,
Mhm.
in the second bullet point, I think that's the only place it just says special education staff member. Would we want to put certified in front of that?
Yep.
Because I think the rest of them, I see the word certified, just to kind of keep it
Yep,
cohesive.
good catch.
question I have is if we say like, if it's subject to the availability of substitutes, sometimes our resource staff don't get substitutes. I mean, we put in for it and they don't get it. That wouldn't disqualify them for taking that day, correct? Like is that right? If they worked with, as the building principal, they worked with us, we established that date, that sub job just didn't get filled. Would they still be able to take that day? Would that be?
I think the intent of that is if on the front end, you know already you've
There's
got the whole staff
Yeah.
members
Yeah.
out, and you're
Somebody
like,
comes
okay,
in.
this is probably not the best
Yeah.
day.
Okay, I just was
Find
thinking
another.
through that, okay.
I mean, we even talked about adding somehow saying, try not to do it on Mondays and Fridays.
Right.
You know, we even talked about that language too. That's just short on subs, but we figured, you know what, that can be talked about with two responsibilities versus actually writing something. And again, less is more. And I think that was more for, like Michelle said, if you say, hey, I'd like to use that date on September 28th, look, we've already got 10 absences that day. Hey, maybe let's look and find another day where we've got a larger chance of having every job filled.
Looking at this, I think that very last bullet, where it's crossed out, should have been another one. Because nothing addresses how to request these days. And that last one, if you make it its own separate thing, it's no, like, that's how you would get that. Like, do you put it in frontline? Like, do you just, is it another category? Like, where does it go? So I think that originally was intended to be another bullet point. The part that's currently crossed out.
District.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
The
intent of
because it's
that
about
was a
the
little
schedule.
different, but looking at the rest of the language now here, I don't think that is necessary, but I do think your
Yeah.
question of
Yeah. How do they?
assuming this were to be ratified.
Right.
Like that process would be an important one.
We talked about that for the absence and we're gonna have to find what category that goes in, right? And so once we figure that out, we'll educate our principals, and when that educator comes in to talk with their principal about the day, they'll be able to explain how to put that in. So it goes in the right place and gets designated as the right kind of building.
So that doesn't count against their
Yeah.
leave, but at the same time provides that tracking so that then we've
Somebody
got a
knows
matchup
they-
between an absence and a sub need.
Talked about creating a new category, but we think it'll fit
Yeah,
under an existing.
Yeah, we think maybe it'll fit under the one we use right now when we have an educator that we've maybe asked to come and do some curriculum work, you know, during the day. That kind of thing, but we gotta do some work to figure out. Because that hits a certain budget. There's just.
Once we have all that worked out, we'll educate our principal and they'll be able to.
When the sub
inform
cost
that.
starts coming out of budgets, that's when we get really interested. Making sure we've got it tracked right, so.
I did forget to say that Warner said that
Oh, yeah.
Wednesday nights are classes. No, for count for the degree. No. Wasted some paper on one sheet, but I saved some paper on this sheet. So we do have the language that as a hard copy, but I think everybody knows student behavior is high on the list, whether we're talking administrators, counselors, paras. Student behavior is something that we hear from all of our employees, so we wanted to do a little work on seeing if we could update some of our languages to clarify some processes and maybe put a little more meat into our language. So that I'll pass it on to Megan.
So to kind of framework this, up there it says 50% of Olathe educators are either very dissatisfied or dissatisfied with quote unquote support for challenging student behaviors / situations, which that is higher than the state and the benchmark for the districts from the last year's teacher engagement and retention report. But then we also wanted to talk about how 35% of Olathe educators are either very dissatisfied or dissatisfied with quote unquote support for student social emotional needs, again, from that report. And then 34% of Olathe educators either marked very dissatisfied or dissatisfied with quote unquote support for educators' mental emotional health. Again, from that 2025 teacher engagement and retention report. So as we're thinking about student behavior and how it impacts every person in the building, we can look at some different aspects. So obviously we know that a class or a caseload size, as well as the needs of those students within that class or that caseload, and then what the amount of support that's being provided or not can turn to educator or educational support burnout. Knowing that sometimes supports may be difficult to access, and then maybe the documentation process can feel cumbersome to some educators, taking time that they might not be able to complete that in their contract day. Fear of appraisal consequences based on students' social emotional needs. Fear of getting behind when being responsive to students' social emotional needs. So thinking about the other students in the class and what may or may not be happening when they are trying to meet those needs of the student in the moment. And the quote says, "We're managing crises. Don't pretend that doesn't affect instruction." So overall, there's a snowball effect from our student behaviors as educators across the district are trying to navigate the social emotional needs of our students, as well as our own educator mental health and well-being. So this kind of summarizes some of the feedback we received in the bargaining survey that we gave to bargaining unit members back in December of 2025, as well as just one-on-one conversations that we've had since then. And then we wanted to pull some data from that bargaining survey just to kind of highlight. So the question was, as you consider your future in public education, what is your #1 area that could be enhanced in order to increase your likelihood of remaining in Olathe Public Schools? So looking at that orange one first, being the largest, reducing educator workload so they can focus on meeting students' needs, which we all know that we are in that classroom because we want our kids to succeed. And then the second, the kind of teal blue one, was our second one in that category, prioritizing safe and healthy workplaces, including increased supports for student behavior. Then another question said, as you consider your future in public education, what is your #2 area that could be enhanced to increase your likelihood of remaining? So that biggest one was the orange, reducing educator workload so they can focus on meeting student needs. So similar, we're seeing that. #2 in this one was prioritizing safe and healthy workplaces, including increased supports for student behavior. You see that again. And then the third, also large one, was that yellow, elevating educator voice at all levels and decisions that impact their work. And so today, the language that we're bringing forward was important. It's centered upon educator voice in what we're bringing forward today. Then for their #3 area of what could be enhanced, the largest, numbers. That teal, prioritizing safe and healthy workplaces, including increased supports for student behavior. Then the next largest was the yellow, elevating the educator voice at all levels and decisions that impact their work. And then the purple, filling classified openings with quality candidates, train them appropriately and retain them. But we also know that our classified staff are not a part of our bargaining unit, but we also want to acknowledge that a wide variety of education workers support our student behaviors, and they're partnering with our certified educators to support them. So our key retention issues outside of compensation, 80% of educators selected reduce educator workload so they can focus on students within those top 3 priorities. And 55% selected prioritize safe and healthy workplaces, including increased supports for student behavior in those top 3 priorities. So just kind of summarizing the graphs and the data that we showed before. So from either our bargaining unit survey or one-on-one conversations, these are just some quotes that we wanted to bring to the conversation. So these are related to early childhood and elementary. The first says, behaviors are escalated every day, and we just don't have the proper training or manpower to deal with them. So much instructional time is lost with the classroom teacher having to deal with these behaviors. It's taking a mental toll on staff as well and impacting the other students. Another being allowing students to physically attack other students and teachers, then come right back to the room when they are calm. We are terrorizing well-behaved students and teaching others this behavior is accepted. It also shows teachers have no control and students are allowed to do whatever they want. So this is just giving us some educator thoughts on how they're currently viewing things. So when we asked, what do you need? How can we improve this? Safety for staff involved in student behavior. What is the process outside of workman's compensation to take comp time to recover? Compassion fatigue. More consistent consequences for behavior across the district. More support in the classroom for students with behavioral needs. Don't need anyone else observing. We just need your help in the moment. Then when we go to a middle school lens, because we know that at each level, things can be viewed different ways. So for middle school, talking amongst colleagues across the district, it is clear that behavioral expectations are not the same everywhere. As someone who works in a title middle school, behaviors are a major issue contributing to student performance and my workload. Over the years, there has been talk about how discipline numbers are too high. This causes behaviors that should be addressed to be allowed, and it is very challenging to deal with. If I didn't have to deal with so much work that has to do with behavior and contacting home on my own, I would feel much less stress and have an overall lighter workload. Then looking at a high school perspective lens, at high school, behavior can show up as not showing up. How can we hold our students accountable and partner with their families to address root causes? It's not just about discipline, it's about the duty we have to keep every student and every employee safe. When behavior crosses the line from a distraction to something truly dangerous, like physical aggression or self-injury, we need more than just building procedures. We need timely updates and real intervention so we aren't just managing a crisis in isolation. Our administrators, counselors, social workers, etc., are all overwhelmed with social emotional needs and behaviors too. So identifying that it's impacting all of us. So that leads us to looking at GBZBA, managing student behavior. Angie's going to pass around this. So with this, you'll see the strike through as well as added language. So the first place is under letter B, and I'll kind of read it in its entirety. The district recognizes its responsibility to support educators with respect to the maintenance of student discipline and an educational learning environment, which includes ensuring individual behavior plans and the student code of conduct are implemented with fidelity. The district will also support the educator with respect to the needs of students who may benefit from the services of counselors, social workers, school resource officers, administrators, and other specially trained persons. In addition, the district will support educators' ongoing professional learning needs regarding student social emotional needs and clarity regarding district and building procedures. And then I'll continue on to letter C. When in the judgment of the educator, the student's behavior requires additional intervention or evaluation, the educator shall request tiered supports for the student from the principal and or administrator and or other appropriate professionals. The administrator shall provide timely updates to the educator regarding the status of intervention and or anticipated timeline for evaluation. Then letter D, when a student's behavior becomes destructive and or dangerous, the educator should request assistance as prescribed in building procedures. The educator should communicate their and their students' needs regarding student removal and or respite after dangerous and or destructive student behavior. Then under that, A, destructive is defined as behavior that results in damage to furniture, doors, windows, or other aspects of the learning environment. This would not include damage to small items such as paper or pencils. Then small letter B, dangerous is defined as behavior that threatens the safety of others or self, including but not limited to physical aggression, elopement that puts the child at risk of harm, or self-injurious behavior.
And there is a back of the page, which I did not get on the slide, apologies.
And then letter E, when confronted by violent or potentially violent behavior, employees shall take reasonable and lawful measures as they deem necessary to protect themselves and students from injury. One of our big goals when working on this and getting educator voice was finding ways of connecting our student code of conduct, our tiered supports, such as PBIS and majors and minors and the flow charts, to provide just a little bit more clarity in the language so that educators can know kind of the steps to follow or what they could expect to happen after a situation may occur. Do you have anything more?
Yeah, I think that, and I think, the language you see in D above the descriptions or the definitions. I got a lot of feedback on, when there's a big behavior, right? Like a pencil attack, that's annoying, when there's a big behavior and the educators and sometimes the students, they just need a little time to decompress. The intent of the language is not to push students out. We're not trying to fuel the school to prison pipeline. We understand that suspensions are not the answer to all. And sometimes having a couple of hours where everybody can kind of decompress from that big behavior or destruction is good for all involved.
I think what under letter C, the intent is just allowing educators to know once they are requesting that support, what to kind of expect in response. Because the original language explains the educator referring the student to the principal administrator, but then we've just had questions of what happens next. Is there a process?
Just have a small correction a bit, only because I write it. It's the code of student conduct.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm the only one that knows that distinction because I have to write it. So,
Words matter and word order matters.
that's right. And I actually get those slipped a lot after a moment.
Code of student.
Yeah.
mention kind of the thing that we tried to be cognizant of is we want to have language that provides clarity, but maybe doesn't get bogged down in like the terms of the systems we currently use. So tiered support versus like PBIS. Can't imagine any system will follow that doesn't have tiered support. So we tried to be cognizant of that so that we're not constantly updating language just based on the title of something.
Just ask some clarification on letter C. I'm making an assumption that when the section that was added about the administrator shall provide timely updates to the educator regarding the status of intervention and or anticipated timeline for evaluation. You're referring to in response to that immediate event, or are you referring to overall that child, where they may be at in an MTSS process, or
Yeah, I mean-
the educator would be owning some of that,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I was
Yeah.
wanted to just clarify.
The piece that we were trying to clarify there is that the first sentence says, when student behavior requires additional intervention, the educator shall request. So after that request is made, being able to have those updates in a timely manner. And we know that in our system, sometimes things can't happen tomorrow,
Right.
but maybe we're going to have specialized personnel come in. Hey, I don't have that scheduled yet, but contact made. Hopefully we'll get that next couple of weeks. Just sometimes that communication helps the educator understand that things are happening in the background.
I think just directly referring to that second line where it says where the student's behavior requires additional intervention or evaluation, we wanted to use those same terms that had already been listed.
Oh, I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like we used,
Parallel line.
Yeah.
but I could see how ending the sentence and or anticipated timeline for evaluation, someone might read that as like a IEP evaluation or.
Right, like,
But it's referring to. Does that make sense?
I view those different ways. I just want to like destructive, dangerous, necessarily unmanageable. This will be something that's not destructive or dangerous. Is that?
Yes, we have a lot of feedback on the term. What does that mean, right? That could mean I'm tapping my pencil and for the 50th day of the school and the teacher's really annoyed. That is those chronic behaviors. We totally understand those are a problem. What we were trying to do here is focus this bullet on those things that aren't distractions, because they are important and
So it's intentionally narrow.
this D is intentionally about these specific things because this is what we're getting the feedback about the most.
And I think also unmanageable could be different for each individual human. So then it's tricky looking at this language. My unmanageable might be different than my neighbor's unmanageable based on just how our skill set or. So I think we removed that word for it to have
Okay.
more
That
clarity.
makes sense.
No, yeah. Because we don't want someone going and being like, this kid is tapping his pencil or he's getting up and sharpening his pencil every 10 seconds. We don't want that to be what people are trying to bring this about.
It's those distractions, chronic distractions, those are not new. Right? Like it's the increase of the destructive and dangerous is what we get to do as on. Yeah.
Awesome.
Get it?
Think through all of the scenarios and interpretations.
I imagine we're gonna come back next
Yeah.
time.
That's gonna be great. Unless we have any other questions?
Got one.
Yeah.
Can we circle back on the blackout days just real fast? Definitely appreciate the like thoughtfulness and thoroughness of this. I did have a question about on May. I think May 24, 25 are also contact days and 26 is the last contract day. So I think we're
Finding
missing.
more
We're
blackout
missing.
days.
No, well, I'm asking, like, on those 3 days, I assume that those are part of what you would intend to say.
Can you say that again, Eric?
So on May,
Yeah.
24, 25 are actually still student contact, and 26 is that last contract day for staff. So would the intent be that it is the text there, that the last 8 with student contact time? Would that be what the intent is, or is it the green box and then add the?
Oh, yeah. Well, what's funny is on the current one, it's not correct.
Yeah.
So actually.
It is on the one that they.
So I think this, there was an error on your, this, was probably the one you were
That makes
working
sense.
with.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, this just got fixed like last
Gotcha.
day or
And we use, okay.
Yeah.
So yes, we would need to do
Move that up.
that box
Just
down. Yeah.
So it would start on the 14th then, rather than the 11th.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, okay, ooh,
So it would still be the last 8. Like the text there is what the intent is.
got it,
Wanna
yes.
leave
Little bit of that.
Yeah, the 14th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20, 21, 24, and 25.
And then 26, yes or no?
That's the last day with
Yeah, the last
contract day,
one,
yes.
Okay. Makes sense? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Eric. I'll correct that and get the slide data to you.
The next meeting is, I was gonna 28th, but I'm off the top of my head, 28th.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah,
next Tuesday.
or Tuesday rather than Wednesday. All right,
You-
see you in
Bye.
6 days.